Now, you were an editor first, is that right?
I never professionally worked as an editor. I wanted to be an editor, but I kind of never got a foothold in that world, yeah.
You went to film school, right?
I went to film school,
This
yeah.
is
I went
nice.
to
I realize we've maybe never been to
never
coffee.
had conversations
Yes.
together.
No,
We've never met.
we're always working.
This is how we made Poker Face Season 2.
When we work in process together, when I'm directing, I'm always showing Ryan everything because, you know, he's a Hitchcock to my Salvador Dali, if you haven't noticed, so it's important for Poker Face. So in the game is afoot for the Cynthia. Did you plan it all in advance? And
Oh, yeah.
because it was just so like smooth.
Well, that one especially because she's playing multiple twins in that episode, and we didn't have motion control cameras or anything, so it's literally just leaving it and split screening it while she goes and does her costume change. It was not only storyboarding, but also I planned out. Okay, so we do this setup. We can leave that camera there.
Viewer, beware. Ryan can see it all in his head. Do you do a lot of storyboard?
I storyboard, yeah. No, well, so I do my own chicken scratch storyboards.
Oh, I've seen those.
You've seen
Yes,
those.
yes.
They look like a 5-year-old drew them. But
A very smart 5-year-old.
Very smart. But for me, and then if it's something that needs to be communicated to the crew at large, like an effect sequence or an action sequence, I'll have a professional person actually draw it so people understand what it is. But the majority of it, I just do my chicken scratch, and then I talk the DP through it. I know you do extensive storyboarding working with Jaron, the DP.
Yes, I've been working with this wonderful storyboard artist, Peter Beck, for some time now on the first short film that I directed. The cinematographer was Chung Hoon Chung, who's really an extraordinary cinematographer. I met him through a friend of mine who's a director, Alfonso Gomez Rejon, and so he said, you gotta work with Chung. He's just the best. I said, but it's my first short film. You don't think that it'll be a problem, this language barrier? And he said, no, because Peter Beck is the storyboard artist. So if you just tell and download Peter on all of the ideas exactly, and then you can show it to Chung, and Chung is such a magician. Well, it worked, and we had a blast, and it was the most joyful experience, I think. It really hooked me on it. So I've taken that sweet, sweet Peter with me through Russian Doll and Orange is the New Black and Poker Face and storyboard every single frame just in case. And Jaron and I, we sit there with Peter and we go through every frame and we love it.
We work with Jaron on the show, but Steve Yedlin, who shoots my movies and shot the pilot of the show. He's done literally everything I've ever shot, So and Nathan, my cousin, who does my composer, we've been making movies together since we were 10 years old. I think you learn how to do things a certain way, and you tend to stick with that process once you find a way of doing it that works for you.
Yeah, that is wild, I guess.
I know that references are really, really an important part of what you do in your process. And so the finale specifically, that was something for you that was really specific.
Oh, I think it was Vanishing Point. Our friend Tony Toast, I think, is the one that brought that one to the table, and it's a great movie. I hadn't seen it. But the real concept that sort of came in the script for the finale was I just had this image of just, Charlie and the Barracuda, and I just kept picturing that sort of, or in Lost Highway or something. That kind of, that yellow dot and that vanishing point that just goes on forever. You can see it in all kinds of David or Keith Carradine pictures. There's a number of those. And it just felt like Charlie and the Barracuda on the road, and, that every ceiling, because they're kind of dropping down into, Patty's apartment so often. Alex, we'll call her. So, it just felt like it naturally had these sort of levels to it, not in the sense of Bong Joon-ho Parasite and the sort of previs extensive stuff that they did on that, but I look at something like that and I always have this fantasy of crafting a really perfect pre-planned puzzle, I guess, where there would be a knock-on effect, like when you're a stone teenager and you're seeing a kind of Kubrick for the first time or something. It's really a wash that hits over you. So I sort of wanted this vanishing point idea, and there was a one-point perspective ceiling in the diner. So Out of the Blue is definitely fun from a production design standpoint and from a diner standpoint. So from a style perspective, aesthetically speaking, I wanted it to look like 70s throwback Out of the Blue, because that is really what our show is in so many ways, is this kind of marriage or juxtaposition of the two.
For me, the first step in directing starts with the script, and it starts with understanding the script. And whether you wrote the script yourself or somebody else wrote it, your job as a director is to get inside the scene that's on the page, figure out what the real intent of it is, how it's supposed to make the audience feel, the information it's supposed to communicate, and then figure out visually how to put the audience as effectively as possible into that state of mind and communicate those things as clearly as possible. And for me, that's the thing of directing, is you can go nuts with fun camera stuff and visuals and all that stuff, but none of it means anything if you're not focused on telling the story.
Have you ever directed something that you haven't written?
Sure, yeah, Breaking Bad, the Breaking Bad
right,
episodes
but that was immediately, the
yeah.
most legendary episode in the history of TV.
Yeah.
Have you ever directed something not as well?
Something not as well written?
Yes,
if
that you
I had,
written?
I probably wouldn't say it in front of the
but
camera.
I mean, really, because it's an interesting thing,
really,
I think, if you come up, you know what I mean? A lot of people probably, or you, are coming up doing a random episode of TV or something. So how do you get past that, even still, you would say?
I think the same thing still applies, because the reality is also, like, if you are looking at the thing on the page and feeling like this is stupid, that's going to come across in the directing. And so even if you're directing something that is not to your taste writing wise or whatever, you still have to find your way inside what's on the page, and you still have to figure out a way to make it work and to make it
Isn't that what editing's for? Rewriting?
Yeah, well, editing's tricky because editing is kind of connected to writing, but it's also a big part of directing, right? I mean, it's like, but editing does in some ways feel like the rewriting process.
Yeah, how much do you find that you rewrite in the edit?
It depends, but sometimes it's not so much, it's rewriting not to make it something else, but a lot of times, and I'll say this with my own writing, I do end up compacting and figuring out, once you get it all up on the screen, you're like, oh, we don't need this. It's more effective if we just go from here to here, and suddenly it clicks, you know?
Yeah. It's true, even acting. Anthony Hopkins, I think, said that. I saw it one time on an online clip. That's what I'm doing on there all the time, if anyone's curious. But he's like, how are you such a great actor, Anthony Hopkins? And, well, I just tell you what I do is I just read it a bunch until it's just inside my brain and I've sort of ingested it. And in a way, I guess you and Anthony are saying the same thing. So by that logic, transition property being what it is, I do believe you just became Sir Rian Johnson. A sensation. To see how it all comes together, stream Poker Face Season 2, only on Peacock.